light breaking, we are taking, this is our time. Just breathe, this will be a hard fight. The truth cash out in the night.
What's going on, everybody?
How's it going, Johnny?
Doing good, Richard. How are you, man?
I'm doing outstanding, but I hope to get better later.
Oh, yeah. Well, welcome, everyone. This is the very first podcast episode of Sasquatch Unredacted. I am Johnny Two Bears, and this is my co-host, Richard Farabee. If you guys don't know who we are, I have been doing Sasquatch research since about 2017, 2018-ish. And I have a team that I am a part of in Georgia called the Sasquatch Encounter Brigade. Richard, you want to let everybody know what you're doing down there in Florida?
I am the BFFG Bigfoot Research here in South Florida, and been doing it for a few years now. I have my own channel, and so if anybody's interested in checking out, please do. Big fan of Sasquatch Encounter Brigade. That's how me and Johnny became friends, and we've been lucky enough to do research together on 2 different occasions, so it's been pretty awesome.
Yeah, man. I actually I grew up in Florida, so it's nice to still have friends and contacts down there and visit every once in a while. And good times having our team go down there and their team come up here. But tonight we're gonna go ahead and jump right into it. Now, like we're just saying, me and Richard both have our own projects, our own teams on the side. But we wanted to come together and do our own podcast. And one aspect of the podcast that we're going to talk about pretty much in depth tonight is we are going to be starting a project. And we have an affidavit, which basically just is for individuals that we interview, whether it's an eyewitness or researchers that actually choose to sign this affidavit, basically saying that all the stories that they're telling, the video, the evidence, everything that they provide and they talk about when it comes to Sasquatch is 100% true. And we're doing this. This isn't I need to make this very, very obvious for everyone. And we're doing this for people who are willing to just take one step more than just tell their story. This is for people who are willing to put a little bit more skin in the game. The analogy that I've been using is it's like the military. Some people join because a judge says if you don't, you're going to jail, and they choose, just an easy job or whatever. And then there's other people that want to be the tip of the spear, and they want whatever job it is that gets them the most action. And that's kind of what we're providing. In no way, shape, or form should this affidavit be used in general for the Sasquatch community to say, hey, if you don't sign an affidavit, we don't believe you, because we're going to be interviewing individuals that I imagine sometimes don't even want to be seen on camera. They want to stay completely anonymous, all the way up to researchers who, they live their lives doing this and are willing to do that. Signing one of these affidavits is not for everyone. And we actually have a lawyer that actually helped us bring this to life. And we want to bring him on, Mr. He goes by Lenny, but Mr. Leonard Athos, and bring him on and have him explain.
You want me to do the intro first and give him an idea of who he is?
Yeah, you can go ahead and read that out.
Yeah, well, he goes by Lenny, but it's Mr. William Athos. He's a licensed practice law in the state of Florida, the southern, middle, and northern federal districts of Florida. And he represents clients in all federal districts of the United States as engaged, including clients extradited from foreign nations under U.S. indictment. He's he's got a BA at Loyola College. He has a doctorate at the University of Miami School of Law, He was with the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration Special Agent, U.S. Department of State Foreign Services Institute, extensive real property legal education, attorneys title funds. His experiences, he's a criminal and civil defense attorney, assistant U.S. attorney, United States Attorney's Office, Southern District of Florida, U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA special agent, and was a Maryland state trooper and detective. So pretty impressive man. Very impressive man.
Mr. Lenny Athos.
Good evening, gentlemen.
How you doing, sir?
I'm doing quite well. And yourself?
We're doing good now that we actually have an actual real life professional in the group.
Well, I don't know about all that, but thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you for being here and being a part of this. Tell us a little bit of why you got interested in this topic.
It actually happened kind of accidentally. I mean, I've been hunting my whole life and fishing. I like the outdoors. I'm originally from Maryland, but by way of the government, I ended up in Florida via South America for a couple of years. But I got to Florida in '88. But I hunted before I was here. I hunted while I was here, and I've always enjoyed it. And I remember hearing things about Bigfoot and Sasquatch, but I really didn't have an opinion one way or the other. I was completely agnostic about it. I just didn't think anything at all one way or the other. And then during COVID, I had a complete replacement on my right knee, and I was convalescing, and I was coming out of this. I came out of the surgery the day COVID hit. So while I was getting better at home, I couldn't go anywhere anyway. Everything was closed. The courts were closed. There wasn't anything I could do, even if I could get around. And there was a channel on YouTube that I used to watch all the time for hunting, and still do. It's called How to Hunt by Steve Isidol. He's a Canadian. I think at that time he was in Alberta, but now he's back in Vancouver Island, excuse me. And I'd watch his shows, and I enjoyed them. He'd back elk hunting and grizzly bear hunting and different things. And then I saw where he had another channel on the facts on howtohunt.com. So I assumed it was just some good old tips on how to hunt. So I thought, well, let me watch that. So I was bored. So I turned it on, and it wasn't all about that. It was about this subject. And it just kind of caught my interest. And then through him, he mentioned a couple of other people. One of them being Scott Carpenter, rest his soul. He died in the last year or so. And then through him, I found Kerry Arnold in Bigfoot Odyssey, who's Mississippi. And strangely enough, he lived in the town where my sister-in-law lives. My wife is from Mississippi. Anyway, it caught me. I mean, and I especially like to watch the first person interviews, because obviously with my background, I did and still do a lot of interviewing people, trying to determine the facts from the fiction and making sure I have a truth teller in front of me. I did that for many, many years on the job in the state police, and then again in DEA, and then as a federal prosecutor for 9 years, and now. And I just became totally enamored with the subject, because I don't know what it would have been like if I had run into one of these things. And I'll make it very clear, I've never had an encounter. And Lord knows if I ever heard anything and just dismissed it, not having any idea what I was listening to. You know, the old saying, ignorance is bliss. But I'm just really, really interested in this. And it's a fascinating subject. And I really enjoy being involved as much as I can, but I've never had any personal experiences. But I sure have watched a lot of them in the last 4 years on YouTube, and spoken to as many people as I can get a hold of. So that's how I got involved in it. And then, and I also have an issue with some of the allegations that I've heard where people from our government have threatened people. They have a term for that. It's called extortion. And I don't care much for that. And so that upsets me too, if it's in fact happening, which I have every reason to believe it is.
Oh yeah, I 100% believe that. That's sometimes I tend to think that it's kind of one of those things that takes care of itself because there are, so hard to catch up with. But, we've all heard the stories of, Bureau of Land Management and, Fish and Game and everybody else that'll become a part of whatever happened. And then all of a sudden the information disappears.
Yeah.
So it's good to have somebody like you on our side to try to get the truth out there. And hopefully, when you and I talked before, you talked about, if anybody was ever having to deal with that you would love to, that you would represent them,
Oh, I really don't like the idea. If someone from the government is coming in and telling you, if you talk about this, we're going to put you in prison. I believe that's wrong.
Yeah.
That's good. We got you on our side.
I had
Yeah.
clearances that I couldn't talk about stuff when I was working and wouldn't. That's different. I worked for them. They were giving me information as part of my job, and I'd taken an oath, and I was in there, and I had to follow those orders. But a civilian, just a normal, ordinary person, has an event, and then he's threatened that he can't reveal what happened. Nah, I don't like that.
Well, that's kind of, we're on the same page with that, because that's what's this whole affidavit, the reason why we brought you on. That's kind of the whole purpose of this, is what kind of brought me forward is being inspired by people who actually, they had something to lose. They didn't have to come forward. You've got professionals, doctors, lawyers like yourself, military personnel, people with lives that could actually, be made worse if somebody decided to, or if anytime, unfortunately, you bring this subject up, there is somebody's going to question your credibility. It doesn't matter who you are, unless someone is a fan of the topic or had a sighting themselves. Anytime it's mentioned, people give you that funny look. And it takes a lot to stand firm in what you believe in. Of course, that's like that with anything that we do in life. But with something like this, I think it's important myself because we don't know what they're doing. We don't know what these things are capable of. We don't 100% know if, there's a lot of researchers out there that believe these creatures are taking people. Now, I don't know that to be the case at all. But, we deserve to have that information. We deserve to know what's in our woods. I got involved in this because I live right on the edge of a very large wildlife management area. And these creatures are here in this wildlife management area, and there's neighborhoods all around this place. So there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to talk about this. Now, can you kind of explain
the affidavit?
The affidavit itself.
Well, when I was trying to put it together for you, I kind of like toyed around with different things, and I wanted to name it something other than just affidavit of truth or whatever. So I found the word veracity. If you look up veracity in the Oxford Dictionary, it says conformity to facts, accuracy, habitual truthfulness, and that's really all we're looking for. In an affidavit like this is for people to tell the truth.
Right.
And so then I just penned out the affidavit with, I guess you would call it legalese. But basically what it is
would you mind reading it for everyone?
No, for sure. Sure it is.
Better you than me, because it's got some
definitely
big words in there.
Well, here's what it looks like. I don't know if you could see this well, but probably not, huh?
No, not real good, but
all right, well,
okay,
anyway,
they get the point.
It says affidavit of veracity. And that's I, and there's a space for your name. Being of sound mind and health, and having attained the age of majority, do hereby solemnly swear and or affirm and declare under oath that my oral and or written statements, and if applicable, any audio or visual material, photographic items in any format, written and or audio or video recordings, any physical items, any real or circumstantial evidence that is either tangible or intangible, and any other relevant items that otherwise have been obtained, produced, or provided in furtherance of and or in support of my statement, story, narrative, experience, or encounter, and or are being provided in furtherance of the corroboration of my personal declaration of the events surrounding my experience or encounter, are the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And then I hereby swear and or affirm that I have not directly or indirectly produced or caused to be produced anything that is not completely and absolutely the truth to the best of my personal knowledge, belief, and ability. And then I have a signature and date line for the affiant, a printed line for the affiant's name, and then a date and witness line and the witness's printed name.
That is excellent, sir. That is exactly what we were looking for, and very thorough. And the whole goal of this, and we've all talked about this, is not. This is not a got you. This is not, if you don't sign an affidavit, you are a liar. That's not what we're doing here. What we're doing is providing just one more step, one more opportunity, one more tool for people to say, hey, I'm willing to put, at least if nothing else, just put my word on the line that these creatures exist. Because that's what every bit of this is about. And eventually, hopefully, who knows, in 2 years, I would love to be holding a stack of papers and be able to say, hey, we have 100 people who are willing to swear that they have seen the creature known as Sasquatch. And, and not everybody is going to do this. We don't expect everyone to do it. For some people, it may be a really bad idea. You may have a job to where you don't want to be on the internet signing paper saying you saw a Sasquatch. It may not be a very good idea for you. You may be in the middle of a divorce from a crazy person and they want to use something you say against you. That's, if people really have to know that, this is, to us at least, it's serious. But we really appreciate your assistance in this, Mr. Athos.
It's absolutely my pleasure. I mean, I hope it furthers along the mission, which the collective mission for everyone in this community is to bring out the truth.
Right.
And that's all we all want to get to, is the truth.
Exactly.
It'd be a lot easier if our government would help us a little bit, but that doesn't seem to be in the cards right now anyway.
Yeah, that irritates me a little. I run around in the woods and just, get super happy when I just get just a little bit of evidence, a new vocalization or, a piece of physical evidence. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I bet the government's got cages of these things and they know everything about them. And we're desperately trying to get one little thing to back up the reality,
In my humble opinion, one of the primary directives for any government is to look out for the well-being and safety of its citizens. And if, I listen to a lot of the podcasts, some of the things I've heard from Fred up in Alaska and a few of the other people, there's at least a real good possibility that these are predatory creatures on occasion. And if they are, that's a danger.
Oh yeah. Especially
apparently they're carnivores. So, I mean, who's to say what their selection of meat is if they're hungry? I mean, if they're taking people, and there are some stories that just absolutely, you shake your head. Tom Messick up in New York is one case. If anyone's familiar with that, there was another young man from Georgia who was on a survey crew who disappeared and never found him. And then some of the things you hear from Alaska, and it's not any one isolated area either. It's everywhere. Where I live outside of Fort Lauderdale. And when I got interested in this subject, I found less than a mile by the way the crow flies here, they had a whole series of events in 1974 that were all in all the newspapers. I found all the articles and all that. They killed a cow. It killed a horse and hurt a pony. And people had eyewitnesses that saw these things. Mm-hmm. And nothing official.
Right. We need to have you on again with some of the stories that you've collected or do you find to be, credible. That would be a good thing to do, to have you on. I'd like to have you on again.
Okay.
Sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. Well, we're going to bring on our first victim. Dun, dun, dun. We're going to let you go. There you go. Good job,
Okay.
Richard.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for having me on, and of course I've already subscribed. So,
Well, thank you, and thank you for your help. And let me tell you, folks, if you can find it, Mr. Athos did this on his own time. And
Lenny.
Or Lenny. I'm sorry. I just
I do
can't.
it too.
I can't help it.
Too. I do it too.
Lenny did this on his own dime too. He didn't charge us. He was more than willing to help us out. And good luck finding a lawyer to help you for free. And we found one. Found Bigfoot and a Mr. Lenny.
Well, I remember when you asked, he goes, "Man, I really want to do this. Do you know any attorneys?" Right off the bat, I was like, "And you know what? I do."
Well, I'm glad I can help. I think it's very honorable what you're doing, and this again, the old saying, "Locks are for honest people." So, you have an affidavit if someone's willing to sign it, and again, it's to the best of their knowledge, belief, and ability. If they really believe in what they saw and they're being credible and honest, then they're fine.
Right.
Well, no, we appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm here.
Definitely did something great. We appreciate it. We appreciate you. And again, you're a big supporter of what we do, and we appreciate you. So,
okay. Well, thank you, gentlemen, and good luck.
All right. Thanks a lot, Mr. Lenny.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, we're about to bring on Tracy Hall. Now, before I bring him on, we did a sound check earlier. His headphones weren't working very good, so I'm going to talk as little as humanly possible, and we're just going to bring him on. Tracy can hear what I'm saying now. We're going to bring him on and let him start from the beginning and just tell his story from beginning to end, and then when he's done, we'll take questions after that. I'm sure Richard will have questions. I'm going to have questions. So
yeah, and that's the one thing I want to remind everybody in the chat room is just hold off. We just wait, and then there will be a portion where you guys can ask some questions. And when you do your questions, put it all in caps so it sticks out. We know who's asking what. So kind of get some organization going.
All right. Well, I'm about to mute me, and I'm going to mute Mr. Farabee and Tracy Hall. You have the floor, sir.
How we doing, Johnny? Good to see you guys again. Hope everybody's doing well. And that was pretty interesting seeing the gentleman you guys had on. I appreciate his hospitality and helping us out through this organization like he's doing. I really appreciate that. Again, my name's Tracy Hall. I was not a believer back when I was in high school. I did read a few books and stuff like that, seen a few things on television that about the subject, Bigfoot, Sasquatch. Been hunting all my life, fishing all my life, woods person, and I just couldn't find it credible. And all of a sudden, I find myself, I believe it was October of 1987, opening weekend of deer season. My dad and I was hunting in about 50 miles north of Atlanta. And we're about straight shot, probably a half a mile from the Chattahoochee River. And at our hunting spot, the family owned about 200 acres. We got to our spot well before daylight, pulled in, got out of the vehicle, and immediately we was hit with a very strong, pungent, skunk, septic, rotting meat smell. Neither one of us had ever smelt anything like this before. We kind of just looked at each other, got out. We looked around for a few minutes, didn't find anything. And from where we parked to where my dad hunts, where his stand is, probably several hundred yards. And then I dropped him off, and he had a blind set up on the top of a big oak tree, a deadfall. which overlooked a big creek bottom. And there was two creeks on the property. James Creek, which was going that ran north and south, and then Bagley Creek, which ran east and west. And he was hunting James Creek. Where they intersected, I would have to cross James Creek, and then I was paralleling Bagley Creek. And my stand was probably 100, 150 yards from him. If he shot or I shot, we could obviously hear the shot. We could probably scream and hear each other, but no way we could see each other. There was a large hill, 200 feet high between us. It was hills and hollows. And so when we got to his stand first, I pretty much forgot about the smell, and he got him on his stand, and then I turned and walked down again well before daylight, using a flashlight to maneuver, and I crossed James Creek, which it was probably 8 feet across, and I crossed it and made my way into my stand. And back then we didn't have climbing stands. They were out, but we didn't have one. We would build our stands, and the stand that I was in was a built stand, and it was 10 feet off the ground, only because any higher than that, and you were in the canopy, then all you could see was straight down. So I was about 20 feet from Bagley Creek, and just the other side of that creek, there was a large hill that you couldn't walk up without holding on. And a friend of mine and myself had made a motorcycle trail between our houses. It was about a mile or two between our houses. And as young kids, we kind of, instead of riding on the highway with our dirt bikes, we made a trail so we could go back and forth. And we hunted this place and everything. So I get to my stand, and it's just starting to see the horizon. You still having to use a light. I get in my stand, and as soon as I sat down, I started hearing something. It sounded like somebody walking, and I stopped. I kind of listened for a second. It was coming from my right, which was up Bagley Creek, and I'm looking in that area and kind of dumbfounded because I don't see no light, and it was odd to me. I didn't really notice the smell anymore. I guess I had just kind of forgotten it. But anyway, so I'm sitting there and I hear this for maybe a minute. May not have been that long, but I hear these footsteps and they're getting closer. And the trail that paralleled this creek goes for 3/4 of a mile, and a couple places it goes up this large hill. So I'm sitting there. I've got 12 power Leopold binoculars. I've got my deer rifle and a handgun. And I always carry a handgun, just, kind of a sporting thing. If I see a deer closer range, I take it with that just because. But I was well armed. I'm sitting there and I can just start seeing motion. And if you've got your binoculars, if you pull those up, they'll gather light, all available light, and you can see stuff just a little bit better. I won't say it's 10% better, but you can, if you're just seeing an outline, you'll see an outline with slight detail. And I pulled my field glasses up, and I kind of was just dumbfounded because all I'm seeing is just a silhouette. And it's probably 40, 50 yards from me, and it's coming straight to me. It's coming down the trail that's halfway between my stand and the creek, and I'm 20 feet from the creek. So I'm looking at this, and at that moment in time, if you look at the ground, you could see leaves. If there was a branch that had fallen out of a tree, you could see leaves, but you couldn't tell if it was an oak or a maple. You could just see the leaves. And when I literally remember pinching myself, thinking I was in a dream or a nightmare. And I pulled my field glasses back up, and this thing never broke stride. It was a constant just boom, 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 boom. And I never heard it trip. I could hear limbs break occasionally. And I pulled my glasses back up, and as this thing walked, I remember seeing it look like dreadlocks under its arms as it was walking. You could see it kind of swaying slightly. And as this thing was literally coming almost straight to me, I just remember this matted hair. You see, like buffalo, when they are shedding, their hair gets real matted up, and that's what it looked like. Obviously, it's still so dark. The creature looked black, and it's coming, and I'm like, it was the stupidest thing. The thought that I had, because the first real thing that I thought of was, how in the world is somebody walking down that trail on stilts? And it was just, why I thought that, I have no idea, because I'm looking at something that's not using a light, and it's massive. And when I say massive, I mean it is the largest thing I've ever seen. I was raised on a farm, and I can pretty much tell you within a few pounds how much a hog weighs, or a cattle, or whatever, because I did it most of my life. And this thing comes down, and it's 30 feet from me now. And it's literally, it just keeps walking. And I'm looking at it with my naked eyes now. And as it was coming by, its left shoulder was on my side. And I just remember when it got directly in front of me, I mean, literally 15, 20 feet tops. I remember seeing the massiveness from its chest to its back was 4.5 feet thick. And its head looked like a 5-gallon bucket. It had no neck. And I never seen detail of its face. But I remember seeing its hands beside of it, and its hands looked like a softball glove. It was just, it was so large. And at that moment, I wasn't in fear. It was literally almost like a peace. I mean, I wasn't scared for my life. This thing, if it had turned and come to me, it'd probably been a different story. But when you're dealing with animals, creatures that live in the woods, deer, whatever, that's their area. They know you're there. Their senses are far greater than ours. Some of them 100 times senses than they're smelling on. But it never turned. It never broke stride, and it just kept walking. It walked right by me, and the legs on it, its legs were larger than my waist easily. And I'm 187 pounds at that time, 6'2", and 32, 34-inch waist. And when it walked, it was phenomenal. And I was dumbfounded. And as it walked by me, it's literally on the trail that I came up on. Now, from my stand to where the creek was that I crossed was probably 50, 75 yards. And it's kind of at a slope going down. And when this thing gets past me, I don't know, 10, 20 yards, I could see it plainly. I pull my field glasses back up, and as it's going down, I'm just looking at it, and it's just, I couldn't really see definition. I mean, I could see the space between its legs and its arms. It walked like a robot. I mean, it was just, its arms, it couldn't have put its arms close to its side if it had to. But as I'm watching it, when it gets down so far, I can only see from its waist up. And I'm still looking through my binoculars, and all of a sudden I heard water splashing. I just heard a big splash, and it disappeared for a second. And I pulled my field glasses off, and I looked, and then it kind of popped back up a little bit further to the right from where it was. And I'm looking again, and what it had done when it got to the creek, it turned right and it started going up James Creek, which is toward my dad. My dad was probably 60 yards from that creek, and he's up on a hill looking down. And now I started getting a little concerned, started getting my senses kind of started relaxing a little bit. My adrenaline was super flowing, but I started worrying, and I guess finally got calmed down, and I can see the ground good now. I mean, I could tell what everything was. So I give it just a couple of minutes. I don't know, maybe 5 minutes. And I climbed down. I left all my gear in the stand except for my weapons. And I remember when it was in the front of me, I had one of these big mag light flashlights, the big D cell, which it was 18, 20 inches long. And I had it in my hand along with my handgun, and I couldn't make myself turn it on. I guess I couldn't. And I didn't know if I wanted to see what it was, or if I was thinking maybe if I turn my light on, it's going to know I'm here kind of thing. I don't know. There's a lot goes through your mind when something like this happens. But if this creature, if it had turned and walked up to me sitting on a 5-gallon bucket, I could have touched its head with my rifle and not bent my knees. It was that large. And so once I get down, I go down to the creek where I had crossed, and it crossed just a few feet up from it. Now the creek is about waist deep, the creek bank, not the water. The creek bank's roughly waist deep, and it turns, the water's only ankle deep, half knee deep in places. And what I had heard was when this thing pushed off, it apparently just pushed off, with 1 foot and went to step across this creek that me and a friend of mine as teenagers, we couldn't run and jump across it without getting our feet wet. I get up there, and a bank, a chunk of the bank, probably 4 to 6 feet around, had collapsed into the creek. And it was kind of an undercut bank, but when he pushed off of it, that's what I heard. It just collapsed into the creek, and then it disappeared for a second, and then it popped back up, and it was going up the creek. So when I got there, I looked, I seen this, and I remember seeing a large track. I would guess at least 16 inches. I didn't look at it that close, but the water was running through it, but you could see the impression, 16, 18 inches. I mean, it was huge. And then I kind of looked on the far bank, and I noticed toe prints in the bank, and it had slid down. When it stepped off, when the bank gave way, its foot went into that bank, and it slid down. And I looked at it. When I stepped down to the creek, there's a sandbar, and I looked, and I remember seeing its big toe print, and I literally could not cover it with 4 fingers. Its big toe was as wide as 4 of my fingers. And I just looked, and I'm like, these things are real. Well, I stepped across the creek, and I had to go swing around behind my dad because obviously I don't want to walk out in front of him. So I get behind him 40 yards or so, 50 yards, and I can see his orange vest. And I look through my binoculars, and he's not moving, which when you're hunting, you're not moving anyway. But I whistled. We always had a little cue that we would whistle each other when we were approaching, that way just to be safe and not to startle anybody. When I whistled, I got nothing. I got no response. And my dad wasn't hard of hearing. He was very knowledgeable in the woods. He hunted all his life. And I pulled my binoculars back up when I whistled, and I didn't see no movement. And now my heart started racing, thinking he had had a heart attack. He had seen what I saw, and he had had a heart attack. So now I'm kind of running, and I get to within probably 20, 25 yards, and I stop, and I whistle louder. And he immediately swirled around and looked at me. He said, "Boy, that's a good way to get shot." And I just looked at him and I went, whoa, time out. I walked up to him and I said, I whistled. He said, no, you were walking in front of me right at daylight. That's a good way to get shot. He said, you know better than to do that. And I said, no, done to time out, time out. I walked up to him. I said, tell me, describe to me what you saw and where it was at. And he looked at me like I had three eyeballs. And where he was hunting was about 60 yards from the creek. Just the other side of that creek, maybe 10 feet. 3 or 4 years earlier, we'd had a flood, and it actually changed the course of that creek for about 100 feet. So now there's a dry creek bed about 10 feet on the other side of the new creek where the creek's running now. When I asked him, I said, describe to me what you saw. He said, it looked like you, 6'2", 180 pounds, on the other side of the creek. And I said, okay, I'm going to walk down to where you saw me. Put your hand up and stop me right or left until I get where you saw me at. And then look at how I look then. So I get over and I could see slight impressions. They were the impressions were probably 4-foot strides. I didn't measure them, but I know they were a lot longer than my stride. And so I'm looking, and as I'm looking up at him, and then he stops me. Well, he stops me, and I raise my hand up just like this, as high as I could reach. And then I bring it down real slow, and I go walking back over to him. I get up to him, and he's sitting there looking at me, scratching his head. He said, something's not right. I said, what did I look like then? He said, you look like you were 3 feet tall. I said, now mind you, yes, he's 60 yards away. The person or the creature he saw, you're going to look smaller because of depth. And I said, when I raised my hand, I said, what did it look like? He said, you were still short about that far, roughly a foot. And I said, okay, come here. I got something to show you. And he just looked at me again funny. I haven't told him what I saw yet. So we walked down to the creek, 50, 60, 70 yards from him, walked down to the creek. And I showed him this bank that had been collapsed. And I said, it gets better. Look on the bank that we're standing on, get down on at the creek at the sandbar and look on this bank. And he looks at it. And I said, look at that. This thing's toe is wider than 4 fingers. And he looked at me. I'll never forget the look on his face. That was in 1987. He never missed a deer season. He was in the woods. He dove hunted, quail hunted, anything that was in season, he hunted. He turned and he walked straight to the truck. And that's the last time my dad ever went hunting again. He never, ever stepped foot in the woods again. And when my wife or my brother or my mom or anybody, I told my wife, I said, ask Dad about what he saw. And she said, Pop, she said, what did you see when you and Tracy were hunting? He'd just get up. He wouldn't say nothing. He'd get up, walk out of the room. He'd go in and shut the door. Best of my knowledge, he never spoke a single word to anybody about that. And, it was, I told a few people, my friends and relatives, of course, you get that, oh, yeah, right. What are you smoking kind of thing. But as it would happen, it was probably within a couple of weeks, maybe a month, across the street from my grandparents' store. This happened right behind their store. And across the street, a guy had a small farm. He had 7 or 8 head of cattle. And then just the fence that joined it was my great uncle, and he owned a commercial hog farm. Well, the cattle across the street, the guy come in one day and he found 3 of his half-grown calves with their necks broke. They weren't mutilated. They weren't nothing. They weren't eaten. They just their necks broke. And I think it ended up over a course of a week killing all of them. And they called the authorities and they come in. The only thing that I remember, 1 or 2 of them had a hole about, I just remember it being about the size of a baseball right at the base of their neck, right at their neck and their shoulder blades. And it looked like somebody had took a cutter shaped like an ice cream cone and just cut a big chunk of meat out of their neck. And that was the only blood that was there. And then shortly after that, my great uncle's pig farm, which was, you could just about, I mean, it was 300 yards from the store. And they had what was called a fairing house, which is a building that they put female pigs in when they're fixing to raise young. They have to move them out of the fence because the boars will kill them. So they'll come back into season. Well, this building was below grade. You had to walk down 4 or 5 dirt steps to get into it. And the reason they did that is because at the back, there was a trough system that was cut into it. And when these sows would get ready to have their little ones, they would lead them in and they would put them in it was a little 3-foot cage, 10 by 10 with a light and the shavings and all. And they would move them in there till they had their young. And then when they were weaned, they would put the sow back in. The doors that go down to that were large. I don't remember how tall, but I'd say 8 feet. And there were 2x12s, and there was 2 of them. Well, to get in the building, you had to go in the back door and come in and pull this 2x12 out to open the door. It had a big block of wood in it. And something had busted this door open, tore one of the door, didn't tear it completely off, but it busted it loose, walked in and picked up about a 400-pound sow, pregnant sow, did not open the gate. They had these little slide pin gates, picked it up, never found a trace of it, and walked out the door with it. And that was all within a month of each other that happened. And then I never seen nothing else, never heard of anybody else seeing anything. It just went to the wayside. And I was a believer then. And I've told a lot of people, I said, I'm not telling people that encounter to make you believe, because you're not going to make somebody believe it until it happens. Because I was in those shoes. I wore those shoes as a non-believer. And you couldn't put a gun to my head now and tell me that ain't what I saw. This thing looked like a Brahma bull walking on 2 legs. And it was at least, I would put it right at 9 feet. And I'm guessing 800 to 1,000 pounds. And again, on the farm, we're always moving, 600, 700, 800-pound cows, bulls, pigs, 500 or 600 pound taken to the market. I'm used to seeing animals large with that weight. And it literally, that's what it looked like, was a Brahma bull walking on 2 legs. And it totally changed the way I look at stuff now. As far as that, I can't read, I can't watch every video. It's totally just, it's consumed me since 1987. You can't watch enough of it.
I know that feeling myself, completely consumed by it.
Yes,
It's happened to me too.
Yep. And I've never had another encounter. My wife and I did have one or something knock right here where we're at now. We're in central Georgia, and we were out stargazing one night, and there was a meteor shower. It was 2 a.m. And then just for giggles, I walk up, pick up a piece of hickory big as my arm, and we got a railroad tie pea gravel pit that's our fire pit. And I just smacked one of these 2x4s, wham! Within 2 seconds, wham! Sounded like it was about a half a mile off. Somebody would have had to been sitting there with a ball bat waiting for me to do
Ready
that.
to go.
Ready to go. And my wife looked at me, she goes, time to go. And because she's seen the videos, she watches them with me, she knows that's supposedly what they communicate with. And I had one other thing that I've heard. It sounded like what I've heard them people recording them, a howl. And I was hunting. This was over in Pike County, 15 years ago. I was deer hunting, and I was 15 feet off the ground or so, hung on the edge of a lake, and it was about 400 yards across this lake. And right at daylight, I hear this thing on the other side of the lake, and I've never heard wolves in real life, but when something howls and you're inside shake, it's not a wolf. I mean, it literally sounded like somebody beating a drum. I could feel it. And I went from 15 feet high to about 25 feet high. I just kept right on going. I'm like, well, I'm going to put me just a little bit more distance between me and the ground, because I don't know how many of these bullets it's going to take, but I know how many I'm going to use.
Yeah, every one of them.
I'm going to use them all. But
I always tell myself I save one bullet. I always save one.
Yeah,
right, for you. Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. But, you know, everybody's asked me, why didn't you shoot it? Because I'm a hunter and I won't shoot. I've never shot anything that I couldn't identify.
Right.
Now, I know it wasn't a bear. I've killed bear before. It wasn't nothing I've ever seen. But I didn't see its face, but it just looked so human-like, other than gigantic. And I mean, the pictures you see of Gigantopithecus, that's exactly what I saw. I mean, it looked like a 9 foot tall ape of some sort, but it didn't walk like an ape. Not that they can't, that's the only one I've ever seen, but I mean, it never dropped down on all fours, other than when it failed. And I don't know if it did or not, because all I seen was it disappear and then it popped right back up, and then it was walking up the creek. But yeah, totally made a believer out of me. And
I would say so. Something that big. That always impresses me, and you know, I've heard your story before, but for the big toe to be the size of 4 fingers, I mean, that is. I mean, what you're describing is obviously very big, but when you think about the big toe being as big as my hand,
right.
I mean, that's good God. And especially in Georgia, you don't hear a lot of stories about Sasquatch that are that big.
Mm-mm.
And that's a big boy right there.
I've heard of a few things, people up around the Rome area.
Yeah, usually they're up north.
The
bigger ones are usually up north.
Yes, but I've heard, and they're saying 8 to 9 feet in that category. But most of these are road crossings that I heard of.
Mm-hmm.
This wasn't a road crossing. This was 15 feet away from me.
This was your lap, crossed your lap,
yes,
pretty much.
Literally. I mean, if this thing would have walked up to me, I mean, its head would have been at my feet. I mean, the platform was 10 feet because we built this stand. He was right there. He could have easily put his hand up like this and grabbed me by the throat. If he would have wanted me, I'd have been nothing but a happy meal. I'd been nothing but a happy meal for this critter. I mean, people say, why didn't you shoot it? Because he didn't threaten me.
Right.
I didn't have no need to. I wasn't defending myself for nothing. And I couldn't identify it. I know what it wasn't. I know it wasn't a bear, because there's never been a bear in Georgia killed that large.
Right.
If not in Canada, a black bear anyway. But when it did turn and go up the creek, it was a little lighter, of course. I remember looking through my binoculars, and it was primarily black, but I did see slight hues of red. And again, the sun's just coming up, but you know, it's kind of like when you see somebody that's colored your hair auburn, just that brownish kind of red hue. I remember seeing that, but not a lot. It was just like, it looked like highlights. So I would say it was black with red highlights, or auburn highlights, if you may. But I didn't see any other color on it. I didn't see no gray. I didn't see its face. I did see its hands, but I mean the outline, you know, because it was dark when it walked by me. But I couldn't tell if its entire hand was covered in hair, I mean, it had hair all over it, but I didn't see the palm. His palms were facing away from me. But as
Right.
it walked, I just remember seeing this massive softball looking glove hand as it walked by. And I'm like, it could have easily put its hand and touched both my ears easily. Well, I mean, it would have been like somebody squeezing juice out of a lemon. But this
Now,
thing was massive.
when you am I correct in saying when it got, you didn't really feel like an overwhelming fear whenever it came
No,
by?
it was weird. It was like I felt a peace, but I remember like not being able to move kind of thing, or maybe I was scared so much to move, you know, afraid it was going to see me kind of thing. That's why I didn't turn the light on.
Right.
But it was a feeling that I've never had before, but I don't remember being scared for my life until after it had passed. After it had passed, I guess my adrenaline dropped out, and I was just, I was like wet noodle legs. I mean, you know, I just shaking uncontrollably. And I'm like, I had to get down to go check on my dad. But it was a feeling that I've never, ever had before. But when I first seen it, I don't remember being scared to death, you know.
Right.
You know, I guess I didn't raise my gun. I had my gun at the low ready, but I'm dumbfounded just watching this thing like, okay, as long as you keep walking, we're going to be good friends. But you
Well,
turn
You
and
don't-
come this way, we're not going to be friends for long.
Yeah.
And you don't
Well-
think it knew you were there at all?
Oh, I think it did, but it didn't posture or anything to me. It never turned its head and looked at me. It just, from the time I could see it plainly, its head stayed straight. It never turned and looked either way. The whole time I saw it, it never turned. Its head looked like it wouldn't even swivel. I never seen anything move but its arms and its legs.
So if
Until
it did,
when it got to the creek and then turned, of course, its right side's facing me now.
right.
But I only seen it for probably 10 seconds. And then it went behind this hill and I couldn't see it anymore.
So if it did know you were there, it just didn't care.
It probably didn't care. He'd be like, yeah, this guy's 180 pounds, man. You know,
Right.
that ain't no problem. But it didn't indicate that I was there at all. Maybe it didn't know, but you would think,
Oh, yeah. I mean, as hunters,
you would think,
we've
you
all
know,
done it.
deer will smell you for several hundred yards.
Right.
And I smelled it. But the odd thing is I don't remember smelling it when it was that close.
Right.
And I don't know if those two smells were related. The smell that when we got out of the truck, which was several hundred yards away, I don't even know if that was related, but I'd never smelt that before. And maybe I just forgot about it or got used to that smell while it was coming in. But I don't remember smelling that when it was 15 feet from me. I don't remember that.
Now, how large of an area is this? The
The
area that you
property
hunt?
we owned was over 200 acres.
And does it butt up to larger properties? Like it's 200 that you're hunting, but it's actually 1,000 acres total or something like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, this was in that county then. It was there was several lots, you know, 200, 300 acres. It was farmland. It was that property all now is all subdivisions and all that. The actual property where I had the sighting is the subdivision now.
Wow.
And
Shame.
but then there was only one subdivision within 10 miles of us. And then
So it had-
on the
So it
I'm
had a
sorry?
lot of room to move. It could
Oh, yeah,
travel
yeah.
and not.
and
be
again,
seen.
the Chattahoochee River, we were half a mile from a river as a crow flies from the Chattahoochee River. And, you know, a lot of deer. I mean, we didn't have any hogs or nothing like that I'd ever seen, you know, all the years that I'd hunted.
Right.
But yeah, that was weird. I'd looked around after that fact. I didn't quit hunting, but I literally went out and started looking, and I never found any sign or anything odd, other than I've heard that they're attracted to blue. And it was the weird part from the stand that I was in when I walked up the creek, up the way he came from. Sorry. Had a reminder come on my phone or on her phone. I was walking up the creek where this creature came from, probably 75 yards. There was a couple of blue mylar balloons just on the ground. And now, if I hunt 30 times this year, I'm gonna find 10 balloons.
Yeah,
I guess,
Well,
but I just thought that was odd.
It's been brought up before, the color blue, because it's the rarest color in nature.
Exactly.
It's the rarest color. So if
Yep.
something blue out there,
It's going to stand out,
and it becomes intriguing. Hey, what is that over there?
right? And
You
there
know,
was also a blue tarp, and I didn't notice anything that looked like somebody had camped there. Now, mind you, this property been in my family's name for well over 100 years, and if anybody would have been camping there, it would have been me and somebody. But there was just it wasn't a complete tarp, but it was just a partial blue tarp and these mylar balloons right together.
Right.
I mean, they were literally in the same pile. And that was 75 yards, maybe above the stand that I was hunting. And that was like the day after, or 2 days or whatever, after I'd had my encounter, that I walked up there. But I didn't find any kind of shelter, anything that somebody had camped out, nothing like that was really odd or something, a tree break or something like that. I didn't see any forms of that. Although back at that time, I didn't know that they'd done tree breaks. I'd never studied it. I'd only read one book in high school, and I was given the book to do an essay on, and I just had to do something. So that's what I did it on. And, I'd never seen or heard the tree breaks and the structures, all that. Never seen any of that. But
that is quite the introduction into the topic. There's a lot of people that have a bunch of different types of sightings. And I know from my own personal experience, it was like I was sent through like the kindergarten version of an introduction. It started out with small things and then activity and then noises and then eventually sightings. But then you're just introduced all
I went straight to the end.
Straight to the end.
For sure.
Well, I tell you this, in order for you to still be getting out in the woods, after seeing something like that, but there's and the reason why I asked you about the fear thing is, going out at night, doing research and knowing when they're around, or, different things I've had happen. I've had people say that, either one of the two things, they either call me stupid or brave, and probably both of them are probably true. There's a lot.
Right.
I am probably stupid when it comes to this.
Well, I will say it's a lot harder for me. It's a lot harder for me to go out before daylight now than it was before that happened.
Right.
It's a lot harder.
Well, the way I've kind of described it is and I don't know if it's the same for you or not, but once I realized the night that I had rocks thrown at me and I was growled at, and the thing got within 30 feet of me without me hearing a thing until it growled, I realized right then and there that I had no power in the situation at all.
No.
So it's
if he wanted you would have been got.
It's almost like you don't need to be afraid, because fear is kind of what keeps you alive, and it gives you the illusion that you have some kind of say-so.
Right.
And the reality is, with these things, I don't think we have much say-so at all.
No. Well, if he threw something at you, that means he didn't want you.
Right.
Because if he had wanted you, you wouldn't be standing here. You wouldn't be right there now talking.
He wouldn't have gave me a warning.
Exactly. He was toying with you.
Right.
I've been a big advocate.
I've heard that. I haven't witnessed it, but I've heard of it. But I haven't witnessed that. Well,
I've had those discussions. That when you look at all the reports, and you've watched a lot, you've seen a lot, and you look at all the reports, 99% of them are passive. It was a happenstance that you saw each other, and a lot of times they go one way, you go the other, or whatever, or they're tossing something. But I think it's more to get your attention, or or go away, or whatever.
Or they're toying with you,
right? But very rare it's an aggressive. Even a bluff charge is an aggressive act, but it's not. He's not trying to hurt you. He's just trying to scare you off. Go. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's what I tell a lot of people is I fear the woods. I do. I get out there. I get nervous and because of past experiences, but I'm still getting out there because I can tell myself in my head that they are, most of the reports are very, like I said, happenstance, you know?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. That was and I've told a lot of people, I said, those camouflage pants that I had on that day, they were throwaways. They weren't washables. They were throwaways.
Hey, there's no shame in that at all.
No.
That's a big old boy. Well, Tracy, man, we really appreciate it. And to let everybody know, Tracy he is the first one to sign the affidavit, basically saying that his story is 100% true. Now, I'm going to do something different than originally I thought. I don't want to be putting people's personal signatures online. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to at least blur the signature part. And then we are going to, as we get the affidavits, we're going to put them on the Facebook page.
Right.
And that way we can keep up with how many we have. And, and hope,
Awesome.
like I said, eventually, well, who knows? In a year, we may have 20, 25, 30, you never know. But these are, and people need to know that, of course, you send it by picture or email or whatever. This isn't something that, anybody else will ever get a hold of. Nobody's ever going to make a phone call and get any kind of information from me or whatever. This stays from your sent mail to my inbox, and then we're going to blur the signatures, but we just want to have, record of people that are willing to, willing
I have
to
nothing to gain or nothing to lose. I can't lose my job because I ain't got one.
Yeah.
Well, it's like you said.
And I hadn't lost my wife yet. So apparently 28 years and she's figured me out. So, she ain't going to leave and get half when she can stay and have it all. So what's her point,
She's just waiting you out like my wife
is. She is.
What were you saying?
She wants to have an encounter. She said, but not that close. She said, I want it from a distance.
And maybe a juvenile. Let's start with a juvenile.
Exactly. And she and I, as you know, the other gentleman you met, Leonard, and I think I sent you the pictures of some of the structures that we found at his place. He's only 20 minutes from here. And he's had several other things. He still hadn't seen one other than he had that encounter he told you guys about.
Right.
But he's had several things happen this year.
Really?
And
we need to talk to old Leonard then.
Yeah. And Krista and I have been talking about going over where he had that encounter, which he didn't see it. He's seen the movement of it. He won't even go across the creek himself. Leonard's a big old feller.
How much property does he have over there?
He's got 50 acres.
50 acres?
Yeah.
Man, that'd be enough to get out on. And hey, man, that's what we need to do. Get some tents together, build a bonfire, and see what happens.
If I know he hunts a lot right now, but after hunting season, I'll see if I can set that up. If you guys want to do if he'll, and I'm sure Leonard would, because he's interested in the subject matter, and he's had a lot. His wife even heard one knocking, and she was in her house. She was inside and said she heard it.
Yeah. And
he's had several knocks, and he's had other people witness those knocks, and they looked at him like, "What was that?" He goes, Leonard's one of those that he didn't believe me when I told him my story, and it wasn't 3 months later he had that happen to him.
Right.
And he's like, there's something to this. I don't know what it was. He said, but you put some voodoo on me, bro.
He infected you.
Yeah. But I'll see if I can get with him, and after season's over, see if we can get together. Maybe we can do a night investigation or something, investigation over there.
Yeah. Even if he doesn't want to, even if he doesn't want to camp out there or whatever, we can just go out there for a few hours, or, look around during the day and then hang out for a little bit at night. I don't know. Some people don't like spending the night in the woods. Some people don't mind, but whatever he's up for, man, that'd be great just to hang out and also check everything out too.
Heck yeah. I mean, even if he didn't want to, Johnny, you're welcome. You could come stay here at our house. We're 20 minutes from him. We got an extra room, and you're welcome. You could stay here. I'd love to get to know you better and sit and talk more.
Yeah, man.
Only time we met was in Molina.
Hey,
But,
you after the text you sent me the other day, what was it? 37 deer and 31 hogs.
Oh yeah, with my Glock, yeah.
Oh yeah. I think we should hang out because you know where the deer
We
are.
might even find something that's good to eat around here. I got probably 1,000 crappie in the freezer and 2 deer so far, so I think we can find something to eat.
Oh man, excellent. Well,
As
Tracy,
long as
thanks again, man.
Yeah, it was good talking to you, Tracy. Awesome.
Good talking with you, Richard, and pleasure to see and talk with you again, Johnny. And any way that I can help out, more than with it, because like I said, I ain't got nothing to gain or nothing to lose.
Right.
Well,
But
real
as
quick,
as my wife tells everybody, I'm just brutally honest, and some people don't like it, but hey, there's a highway.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
Well, real quick, I just want to ask anybody in the chat room if they have any last minute questions. Anybody
Sure.
got anything they're interested in asking Tracy before we all head out? Any questions? This is your opportunity. But yeah, I'd come up there with you too, but it'd have to include biscuits.
Oh,
Biscuits.
you talking to the biscuit chef now, bro?
Does your wife cook some mean biscuits?
No, sir, I do.
Oh, you do. You know,
It's funny. She just bought me a chef's outfit 2 weeks ago. I'm her personal chef.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh man,
I've
she's
been
got it made.
making homemade biscuits for 54 years.
So
53
you're saying
years.
she domesticated you?
You could say that. She's got me trained now. But yeah, we could probably do that. We could do some biscuits and gravy, and we could have us a big time. But make sure you wear your bigger breeches because your smaller ones ain't gonna fit on the way back.
Yes, sir. All right, hold on. We got one. When you mentioned the hair, would you say it's like spiral coarse hair?
I didn't see the spiral other than the dreadlock looking, but it did appear coarse. It looked like steel wool. It looked like really coarse hair, like a horse mane.
Right.
I do remember seeing that through my binoculars when I looked at it as it was going past me. I do remember seeing like the hair around its neck and all reminded me of the coarseness of a horse mane. Yes. But I don't remember seeing it spiral looking.
Right. You probably couldn't see that much.
No, the
detail
detail was still little off at that hour.
Right.
I could see muscle tone when it was walking. I could see muscle that like its shoulder blades. I could see that barely, but all I could see was kind of the dreadlocks that, and they appeared to be 6-8 inches long as it was walking. I could just see it as it was dangling under its arm.
Right.
But that was about all the detail that I could see. But I can tell you, I don't believe a 5-gallon bucket you could have forced it over this thing's head.
Gosh.
I mean, it was huge.
Yeah.
It was absolutely giant. It almost felt like I was in a scene of Jurassic Park or something. It was crazy.
Dude,
I
if
bet,
we could
man.
ever catch one of those things and have them play for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I'd be happy, man.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You probably fire about 4 linemen, replace them with that.
No doubt. No doubt.
All right. Well, good.
Any more
Good to
questions
go.
for anybody?
I don't see any up there. Looks like we're
Nope.
good. But again,
Good
Tracy,
deal.
thanks a lot, man. And you
All right. Thank you guys. A pleasure
officially-
meeting you, Richard. Y'all take care and be talking to you soon, Johnny.
all right, bud. Keep in
All
touch.
right. All right. You take care. Have a good evening.
Bye.
That was a
Excellent,
great
dude.
encounter, wasn't it? That's
Man.
amazing.
Yeah,
And
I
wanna
talked to him and go ahead.
No, go ahead.
All I was going to say is, I met him at like you mentioned before, at the Molina Festival, and got to hear him talk to him in person and met his friend that he was talking about. And, that's just not only one of the biggest, but one of the closest and biggest sightings that I've heard, particularly in Georgia. Now there's a lot of sightings up north of bigger ones like that, but, good Lord, man, it's hard to, I know they're out there and I've seen pretty big ones, but nothing like that. that's over the top,
Oh yeah.
Actually, that's actually scary. I don't know that if I knew that one was that big out in the woods around the areas I was in, I just don't know that I would play around with that one.
Yeah, I mean, I tell people all the time, I want to film one of these things, but I don't want to be up close and personal. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I want to catch it, a distance away, but
Yeah.
something that large, and if it gets upset with you, it could be pretty dangerous pretty quick.
Yeah. Give a shout out to Flat Rock. Thanks for joining, Levon. Mr.
Hey, Levon,
Lenny,
definitely hit me up on
Lenny,
Messenger.
Chris
Yeah.
Kimball, everybody that joined tonight. Thank you very much. And we will let y'all know when the next podcast will be. And thank you to our guest again, Tracy Hall. Everybody have a good night. And Richard, I'll talk to you later on, buddy.
You got it, man. I appreciate it. And I appreciate everybody that was here and all the subscribers. We appreciate you guys. God bless each and every one of you.
All right. Y'all take care. Have a good one.